today, and I know people are still joining, so just keep coming on. And thank you for joining and helping to celebrate our 50th anniversary, which is this year. So that is very exciting. There'll be all kinds of activities, and Anne will talk more about that at the end. So we are so excited today about this webinar. It is all about the Moving Field Guide. And if you don't know what that is, it's fine, because you will find out more about it. And some of you are probably pros. So it's a kinesthetic approach to environmental education. And you're going to have a chance to not only find out more about the field guide, but also things that you can do to incorporate art and dance into your work. And we've got just a talented crew helping us. So you've got to get ready to move. I hear we might be asked to do something. So you might have to actually get out of your chair, but maybe not. And we'll find out more about that. But this is such a creative, wonderful organization that you'll find out more about. And you'll also learn about our two speakers, Cassie Metter and Jamie McCrae, who will be speaking today, and they will be backed up by Emily and Karina. So we have a talented team on board, and I'll give a full introduction in just a minute. But if you haven't been to NAA's webinars, these are opportunities where we can bring new ideas and insights to the field, like the Dance Exchange. And I know it's Dance Exchange. I always want to put that in front of it. But Dance Exchange and all the work that they're doing to incorporate movement and dance. So if you have any ideas, we would love to hear from you on new speakers, ideas for webinars, and things that you would like to hear that will help move the whole field ahead and our field broadly speaking, because we overlap with so many other fields of learning. I also want to thank the Forest Service, wonderful partners, and this is part of our partnership to develop a series of webinars that can help expand our thinking in this field. And this is an EE Inspire webinar, and I want to turn it over to Rachel Bayer, who is Environmental Education Specialist at the Forest Service, to say a few words. And Rachel, thank you for everything.
Oh, thank you, Judy. Hopefully you all can hear me okay. So the Forest Service is really excited to partner with the North American Association for Environmental Education on the EE Inspire webinar series. And we're particularly excited today as we are highlighting the wonderful work that we've done in partnership with Dance Exchange. So our partnership with the Dance Exchange began in 2011 and is really just a great example of putting the arts in STEAM. So we really hope that you find the presentation useful and are able to apply what you learn in your environmental education programming. And just thank you all so much for all that you do to educate the next generation of environmental stewards.
Thank you, Rachel, and thanks for all you do. And I also want to thank all our affiliate co-hosts who also spread the word and are doing these webinars in conjunction with us. And if you don't know who your affiliate is, you can go to our website, but these are organizations that are working across North America to advance environmental education. So really excited to have this amazing network. And thanks to EPA and EE360 for their support of the webinar series as well. And so this is probably your 8 bazillionth Zoom call just today. We know you are on Zoom all the time, but some of you use Teams, some of you use BlueJeans, you use all different kinds of platforms, and we just want to make sure you know how to use Zoom, because we will be communicating with you through the chat, and you can either send a note to us through the chat to all the panelists, and those are the people that are on video, or to everyone, and we'll all hear it. So please think about questions throughout, make comments, send resources, because everybody will get a copy of the chat as well as a copy of the presentation and the PowerPoint. So you'll get everything that you need, so you don't have to worry about taking notes. And we are recording this, and our speakers today have been very generous about saying they will stay after school for a few minutes. This is an hour presentation, but they'll answer any questions you might have if we run over. So think about questions throughout. Feel free to chat with us through the chat. And we want to thank Erica Cook, who is doing live captioning for us. Thank you so much to make this webinar accessible to as many people as possible. And Anne, thank you as always for all that you do to support the webinar series. Anne is the brains behind all of this, and is our Director of Professional Development and the manager of EE360. So now it gives me a huge pleasure to take a little bit of time to introduce our speakers, who are amazingly creative women that I'm just so excited about having them on. So let me start with Cassie and tell you a little bit about Cassie. She is a choreographer, an educator, a writer, and an amazingly creative human being. She is the executive artistic director of Dance Exchange, and she works to build ways for communities to be together in shared dialogue and critical reflection. She also builds opportunities to work together across generations. She has created a number of projects and performances that help explore questions that are central to all of our lives, and thinking about time and place and how dance can come to meet us and in our shared world. So you'll see here that Cassie has done so much in her life. She has taught and created dance in communities throughout the United States and internationally. She's worked with the Girl Scouts, the National Park Service, Forest Service, as you know, and she's developed and enhanced environmental curriculum with the arts and encouraged environmental stewardship that is embodied in the learning activities that she does. She is currently working with the National Park Service, leaders from the Cherokee community, and the regional artists to build capacities to contend with the complexities that shape our relationship to park land. She's also worked with a number of educational institutions, including Wesleyan University and Michigan State University, among many others, and has influenced educators and students to embrace a cross-disciplinary approach to art making, education, and social change. And I just love this statement. So I just will leave it up there for a minute for you to read about her thinking about how do we connect people to our surroundings and to nature and to this world. And again, you'll get a copy of all of these slides. And now it gives me great pleasure to introduce our second speaker, which is Jamie McCray. She is an ecologist working at the intersection of science, human behavior, and the performing arts. She is currently the managing director at the Alliance for Watershed Education. She is also the founder of the Ecotonic Movement, an organization that is dedicated to facilitating conversations about climate change through the performing arts. She is known for engaging science lessons that integrate art and movement, and she leads workshops for educators interested in enhancing their lessons by adding dance. She is a native of Brooklyn, and she has developed this passion for dance and animals early in life. And I was reading her bio, and she said at age 5, she defended local anthills from careless neighborhood boys. And by 6th grade, she had decided to pursue a PhD in marine biology so that she could understand why the beaches in the Caribbean had so many more plants and creatures than in New York City. She continued her path of biology and dance and education throughout her life. She was a Peace Corps volunteer on the island of Samoa and she experienced the culture in which dance was a language that everyone spoke. Since then, she has focused on her scientific interests and her passion for dance and collaborates with artists to create engaging performances and workshops firmly grounded in science. And you'll find out that she's a natural storyteller with a gift for translating really complex ideas into engaging messages. So we are so thrilled to have you both. And again, I want to thank Emily and Karina, who are behind the scenes, but they have a whole bio behind them. So thank you both, and I encourage you to look up their biographies. So now I am going to turn it over to Dance Exchange, and I think that Cassie, you're going to take it first.
Thank you so much, Judy and Anne. We're so excited for the opportunity to be here today and to be able to connect with such a remarkable network of environmental educators. It's incredible to see where everyone's joining from. We also want to thank our partners with the U.S. Forest Service, who we continue to work with to expand the Moving Field Guide program that we're going to be sharing with you today. I'm joining today from the occupied ancestral lands of the Notachtank, Anacostan, and Piscataway people, known today by many as Silver Spring, Maryland. I also recognize and I'm grateful for the Earth's resources that I draw on to be here today. With that, pass it to you, Jamie.
Hello, everyone. I'm so used to holding workshops and webinars where I can see and engage with the audience. I know that we're going to have a wonderful time together and be ready to engage in the chat as well with me. I am coming to you from Delaware, which is the unceded lands of the Lenape, also known as Lenapehoking. And I'm really looking forward to sharing this time together and getting you moving, even though I'm not going to be able to see many of you as you do that. So why don't we go and jump right in? So you all are here, and we are going to talk about the Moving Field Guide, which is a kinesthetic approach to learning and movement. We're going to talk a lot about what it is so you will know it in your bones. Now, imagine with me, we're on a walk together. I'm from New York City originally, so we're actually walking down a city street, and I've got an urban forester with me. And as we walk down the street, the urban forester is telling us about the different trees that are along the block. Now, this could be just your regular neighborhood walk, but in this instance, we also are going to learn not only by listening to the forester, we're going to be observing the trees, and we're actually going to come up with some movement about what it is that we're seeing, what it is that we're noticing, and what it is that we're hearing. And that, in a nutshell, is what a moving field guide is. Guided walks through space that incorporates your senses, your critical thinking, and your body through movement. So I don't know, you guys are all across the country and all across the world. I think we've got someone from Honduras. Who are the non-human neighbors that you may have encountered as you walk to your mailbox or other places in your daily life? If you would just go ahead and type some of that into the chat. We've got western-faced lizards, insects, songbirds, mule deer. Oh my goodness. Yes, gray squirrels. There's a family of deer that lives by me. There are 3 that I see on my morning walk all the time.
I feel the wave of spring in the chat here.
Oh yeah, like lots of the bees that are coming out, and the clover, absolutely. Spring wildflowers. Exactly. So wherever you are, that is where nature is, right? We're all on the planet, and that is encompassing nature. So we can try and learn more about and interact with these things that we are coming across through using the Moving Field Guide. And I'll pass it to you, Cassie, to explain some ways that you all could connect with the Moving Field Guide.
Great, thanks, Jamie. Jamie's helped us to imagine what a moving field guide experience might look and feel like. I'd like to share with you some of the ways that Moving Field Guide supports educators, families, communities to notice and grow deeper connections to their environment. These are some of the ways you can also connect with the Moving Field Guide beyond our time together. So ways to connect with the Moving Field Guide, we offer trainings both with formal and informal educators. We've developed with educators and led Moving Field Guide trainings for educators from Tupelo, Mississippi to Boston, Massachusetts, really working with teachers and students and partnering organizations to integrate Moving Field Guide experiences into classrooms and curriculum. This year, we're working most closely with Prince George's County public school system here in Maryland to develop online trainings for educators, providing opportunities for engagement online that can then turn students away from their screens and back outdoors to connect with their bodies and their environment. We've also worked with rangers in Great Smoky Mountains National Park and naturalists and with the Audubon Society to offer moving field guide trainings. So next, we also offer workshops and residencies. This has ranged from a single workshop introducing moving field guide to a week-long or even year-long residencies bringing moving field guide to a school, a park, or a nature center. We've also developed support materials like the Moving Field Guide book, which is a teacher training toolkit for educators grade 3 through 5, and an outdoor explorer map to deepen your moving field guide experience beyond any workshop or training. And lastly, we're really excited starting today to be able to connect you to Moving Field Guide through the Moving Field Guide Discover series in partnership with the U.S. Forest Service, as we create ways to connect families and communities from around the country in environmental learning. We're thrilled to be able to premiere the Moving Field Guide Discover with you all today. And just a moment, we're going to have a chance to experience the first episode in the series. I'm excited to be partnering in this first episode with Mark Tweary, who has been really my lead collaborator with the Forest Service and who truly made the start of the Moving Field Guide possible. So we invite you, as you watch today, to join in the discovery and dancing. As you experience the film, notice what stands out to you as meaningful and memorable. What questions might emerge for you? What ideas are sparked? You can feel free to stay seated as you participate, or you may also want to stand as you are able. Just encourage you to make the choice that feels right for you and for your body today. And with that, we now bring you Moving Field Guide Discover.
The whole world moves and so can I. Horizon to horizon, mine awaits. I wanna go outside and bloom with every sunrise. And run just like the wind and bend just like the tree and reach up to the light and move.
Hello, I'm glad we're together and outside today. You know, I just love winter. The way the trees reveal their branches, feeling the crisp air against my face, making it feel alive. Hearing the wind whispering through the trees. When I look around, I notice nature letting go and slowing down. What do you notice? I'm Cassie, and I'll be one of your guides today as we explore the ways plants renew by reproducing and traveling to new places. Let's meet your other guide today.
Thanks, Cassie. I'm Mark, and I'm talking to you from my yard in Vermont. And I want to talk about the renewal of plants in winter. Many plants in the winter look like they're dead, but they're really not. They're saving their energy for weather that's warmer and sunnier so they can grow. Plants use a diversity of ways to reproduce themselves. One of those ways is by producing seeds. But seeds aren't the only thing, because those seeds need to find a home where they can establish and grow with what they need. Look at these seeds. What's the first thing you notice? Size, right? Large seeds like this chestnut carry food with them. But small seeds like this aster have to find all the resources they need right where they land. Here in Vermont in the winter, seeds need to be protected until they can grow in the spring. Often they do that underneath the snow or the leaves that fell in the fall. Here, for example, is a small pile of seeds that were hiding underneath the leaves and snow. Lots of small seeds are spread by the wind. I'm sure you've all seen dandelion puffballs that float away on the wind. This is an aster, which also uses small seeds that float away on the wind. But in addition, it can spread by sending out roots underground, like milkweeds or goldenrods, and produce more plants that way. This crabapple tree can travel by offering a reward to birds that eat the fruit. After the bird eats the fruit and flies away, it will drop the seeds along with a bit of fertilizer. I can show you some more ways that plants travel. This is a forsythia bush, which you'll recognize when you see it full of yellow flowers in the spring. It spreads by seed, of course, but it also spreads by an interesting method. You see how it starts over there, branches over here, bends down, and touches the ground again, forming new roots where it touches the ground in a process called layering. This is a raspberry cane, which bends over, touches the ground again, and where it touches, it'll put down new roots and put up a new plant. So now let's walk down to the creek where we can look at some other ways that plants travel. Some plants that live along rivers, creeks, and streams use the water to travel. If a branch breaks off in a storm or a high wind and it falls in the water, it'll float downstream, get stuck in the mud somewhere else, root there, and start to grow again. This could well be one of those willows that floated downstream and established in a new spot. Now let's take all these ways we've learned that plants reproduce and travel and see if we can make movements in our own bodies to help us remember them. I think Cassie could help with that.
Mark, there's so much movement in what you've just shared with us. Let's remember some of what we've discovered with Mark by making a dance together. We'll begin putting our hand out, really imagining those seeds that Mark held, the big chestnut and the small aster seeds, the big seeds carrying what they need with them, with a hard outer shell for protection along the journey. I loved learning about how plants save their energy until the conditions are right for them to grow. Let's begin by finding stillness and noticing, even in stillness, how much energy our bodies hold. Now let's use our senses to notice our environment. What might you see, or hear, or smell, or feel where you are? Our senses are a wonderful way to connect with our environment. Let's take a walk and see if we can find some small seeds in my neighborhood. Look, here are some seeds similar to the asters in Mark's yard. We learned that aster and dandelion, they make many seeds that travel on the wind and need to find the right conditions to grow wherever they land. Let's take a walk and see if we can find some of the places where seeds may have landed. Big or small, we learned from Mark that seeds need to find the right home to grow.
Mark shared in Vermont that there's a snow cover covering the ground. And Mark shared with us underneath the snow cover, there's a leaf cover. Now, as you can see, we don't have any snow here in Maryland right now, but there is a nice leaf cover.
If we move a little bit of that leaf cover, notice these sort of patches where we can see the ground. I notice that the ground is really wet right now. It's pretty muddy from all the recent rain that we've had.
And as I look at this mud, I can even see some seeds that are mixed in and kind of stuck there in the mud.
What are some of the other ways we learn seeds travel to find a new home? Right, birds. Let's remember Mark reaching up for that crabapple tree in his yard and how he described the birds eating the crab apples, then traveling to a new location where they dropped the seed with a bit of fertilizer. I was excited to discover that some plants renew and spread without seeds at all. Which plants do this? Right, the forsythia. The forsythia will arc and bend, reaching its tips down to the ground. And when it reaches the ground, it re-roots in a process called layering. For our last movement, let's remember the plants Mark shared with us along the stream bank. What do you think is important to remember about how they travel and grow? Right, they travel with the current. So the willow tree, Mark shared that the branch might break off in a storm or high wind, and then it gets picked up by the current, travels down the stream, where it might then get stuck in the stream bank in the mud, and then begin to root, beginning the cycle of growth all over again. That cycle bringing us back to the beginning of our dance. Let's put all the movements together now. Remembering the seed, big and small. The big seed carrying what it needs with it, its hard outer shell. The small seeds traveling on the wind. All seeds needing to find a home with the right conditions to grow. Noticing the ground where we are. Some seeds getting stuck in the mud. Remembering Mark reaching up for that crab apple tree and the birds eating the crab apples and then traveling to a new location where they drop the seed. The forsythia arching and bending its tips down to the ground where it re-roots itself in a process called layering. The willow, the branch breaking, getting caught in the current and then stuck in the stream bank, rooting and beginning the cycle of growth again. Now that we've made a dance together, let's try it with some music. As we do the dance, we can remember all we've discovered and how it's inspired each of the movements. our dance ends, let's find stillness. And notice how our bodies may feel different now that we've danced together. Mark, it's been great dancing with you again and with families from around the country.
How wonderful to explore winter together and make a dance from what we have noticed and learned.
Now that we've made a dance together, we invite you, wherever you live, whatever season it may be, to go outside and record yourself with your phone or your computer doing the dance we've just made. We'd love to see this dance in all kinds of places. It could be your backyard, in your neighborhood, at a nearby park. Here's a link where you can share your dance and see dances others have shared too. Thanks for joining us today. Don't forget to get outside, keep discovering and dancing, and we'll see you next time.
And run just like the wind and bend just like the tree and reach up to the light and move.
Welcome back, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I also hope you were moving and dancing along with us there. I would like to, just go, hey, if you were dancing, what ideas were sparked for you? What were some of those memorable moments that you found as you were enjoying and moving with the video? So go ahead, type in the chat what ideas were sparked for you. And as you do that, I'd like to invite a live studio audience. We are going to welcome a few colleagues and a couple of volunteers. So if you would like to dance with us in this next section, go ahead and say, I'd like to dance in the chat, and we'll go ahead and welcome some additional folks here now. Ah, yes, the chestnut seed wearing the backpack of nutrition. Fantastic. Oh, and I see we've got our studio audience coming in. Wonderful, wonderful. Is the entire studio audience here?
I'm seeing Mark and Louisa.
I'm seeing 4 of the live studio audience.
Jen and Sujata and Natrafia. Welcome you all.
Hi.
Okay, so we are going to start moving a little bit. So my first question for you all is, we just learned a dance in the video. How did Cassie go about creating some of that movement? So if you guys in the chat, audience, if you could tell us how you observed or how you noticed some of the ways Cassie was creating movement from some of what Mark was telling us, go ahead, put that in the chat, and I'd love to open that up to some of our live studio audience. What were some ways that you guys noticed the dance being created? So if you're in our live studio audience, Louisa, just go ahead and unmute yourself and share.
Okay, thank you. So one way I noticed is Cassie was looking at Mark's movement and she was replicating those movements.
Exactly, right? So noticing as Mark was doing some of that delivery, that content delivery, noticing those movements. Anyone else from our,
Another
yes,
thing
Jennifer?
I noticed was some of the descriptions had movement words in them. And so Cassie took those, like the bending for the willow tree. So that, like, she took that movement word and made it into a movement.
Exactly. So there are lots of ways that we can go from content to movement, and you guys have named some, and I'm seeing in the chat also, right, some of the movements were literal, like we were making observations and we had the very small aster seed and the larger chestnut. Exactly. So we're going to go ahead and break down some of those ideas through what we're calling in Dance Exchange spontaneous gesture and detail. So let's start with what's detail. So when we have detail, what we're doing is we're looking, right, at the visual cues. We're using our observational skills, and we're going to conjure details of a scene from memory, perhaps, or imagination. So it's those two ways. So when we talked about the detail of the size, right? And you guys mentioned that in the chat with the really small aster, and that broke down into just this in our dance. And so when we're out and we're observing as scientists or just as people, what we're seeing is really important to the story of the organism or whatever we're looking at. And so putting those details in our body can help us remember that. And I will pass it to you, Cassie, to talk about the latter half of our ways we can use detail.
Yeah, so detail can work, as Jamie said, from like observing the detail within our environment, but also by looking at and noticing the images that might come to our mind while we're listening to someone share a story or content, and to notice and kind of zoom in on the details and the images that come into our mind. So I'll give you one example of how this happened in the video, where Mark was talking about how the larger seeds had to carry what they need with them. And I immediately had an image actually of myself on a hiking trail, because I love to hike and backpack, and an image of sort of this heavy backpack on, and it kind of pulling my shoulders forward, weighting my back down, and that I had to carry on that hiking trip everything that I needed with me, all the food that I needed with me to give me energy, just like the seed has to carry the energy. So it was an association I was making, but then going into the detail of that image to then create the movement. So the images in our mind can also be a great source for creating movement and making personal connection to the content that we're learning.
So let's take a look at the details of the seeds again. And folks that I can't see, please feel free to do this as well. So as we're looking at this detail, let's notice what are the lines that we're seeing in the different images, the texture or the shape, those sort of things in the image. And once we have picked out one of those things, let's try and put it in our bodies. So I invite all of you to take a look and take 30 seconds and just workshop something in the space that you're in that uses texture, shape, some of those images, and put it into movement. And then we'll go ahead and share out that movement. So go into your own dance studio and let's go ahead and move. Okay, I'm seeing some really great movement here. So why don't we, we're gonna do our movement, and I'm not gonna move this time, I'm gonna watch. We're gonna do our movement 3 times and then come to stillness. And as you're doing your movement, also take a look around and notice what other people are doing, and we'll share in that way. So ready and go for it. Whoa, fantastic. That was some beautiful moving. So I'm curious, right? So you see movement that other people have done and you want to know where did that come from? So I'm just going to ask Louisa, I saw this one. Can you tell me a little bit about how you came up with that movement from detail?
Mhm. So that was the aster. The seeds were hanging down, and I noticed there were lines, straight lines, vertical lines, moving. Oh, the wind was moving them. So that's why I'm moving my fingers. So this is the seeds and the flower, and this is the stem.
Fantastic. So let's all do the aster with Louisa. And so we're just going to do that. We'll do that 3 times. 1 and 2 and 3 for the aster. Oh, fantastic. And Sujata, I saw a pulsing down here. Could you tell me about your movement?
Oh, I saw in the chestnut seed, there's all these indentations. So I was stroking each of the indentations, and then a much smaller stroke for the little aster. And then the whole line of them.
I love that. So can you lead us through one piece of that? We're gonna
Sure. Here, let me stand up. So I've got a hand over, and then a little tiny one, and hand over, and a little tiny one, over, and a little tiny one, and then they go out into the world and plant themselves.
Exactly, and I like that to move things on. Okay, so we're gonna hold those 2 movements, and just so we can use them for a little later. So I will remember, and if I don't, I've got one of you will. Yes. Fantastic.
Great. So let's review another one of the ways that you all noticed that I was working on collecting movement from what Mark observed and shared. Several of you mentioned in the chat that you noticed some of my movements actually coming directly from the movements that Mark made while he was talking. So often when we're talking, we're using our hands to gesture and express. There's a part of the story and the ideas that are coming through and the words, but often much more of the story, the ideas that's being expressed through the body. So if we observe those carefully, these expressive movements can then be used to create a dance. And a dance exchange, we call this process of noticing and collecting movement, the tool of spontaneous gesture. So let's practice spontaneous gesture. In just a moment, Jamie's gonna share with us some of what was sparked for her by watching the video. I think Jamie saw it for the first time yesterday, so it's fresh for her as well. But as we listen to Jamie and hear what was sparked for her, let's just really tune in and notice the movements that she's making, the movements specifically connected to the content and the ideas, the description that she's sharing, right? There's the kind of idiosyncratic movements that might be adjusting glasses or tucking the hair or things like this, but we're really looking for those movements that are connected to the ideas. So Jamie, will you share a bit with us about what was sparked for you in watching the video? And you can sit or feel free to stand, or however, whatever makes sense for you to move comfortably in your body.
I'll stay seated, but I'll move back a little bit. So my mind always goes to the ocean, and whatever organisms you can find there. And the image for this that came to mind was of mangroves. And these saltwater tolerant trees, the leaves are waxy, and their seeds are really interesting because the seeds we talked about are dormant, right? So they have to wait to find a place, to find a home before they're going to sprout. Mangroves, however, they are live seeds. So the seeds, it's like the mangroves carry their seeds like mammals do, right? They birth live young, and the seeds can grow up to a foot on the original plant before they drop off and float in the water to go down and get stuck in the mud. So I was like, yes, we've got branches breaking off and moving down and finding homes. And some of those same properties and happenings are going on in these ocean and estuarine systems with mangroves. And that's like an additional way that plants are able to move and spread.
Thanks, Jamie. So live audience, what were some of the movements that you noticed and collected? And those that aren't in the live audience, feel free, if you want to try to describe the movement in the chat. That description might be a rich source of movement as well. But live audience, what did you notice? Just feel free to unmute yourself.
The waves kind of moving back and forth is what I think was one of the first movements, actually. And so that kind of stuck with me.
Yeah, that stuck out to me as well, Natrefia. There was that like statement right away that it took Jamie because of her experience right to the ocean. So it was like the wave, but also that wave kind of like it took her body a little in one direction. So let's just all try that together as our first collection of spontaneous gestures. So taking Jamie to the ocean. We'll let that move the body a little bit to the side where our arms go. Great. Other movements that you noticed Jamie make connected to the ideas and content he was sharing?
I noticed how big the seed is because she made a gesture of how large it is and then compared it to the other ones that we saw.
Jamie, why do you think that you made this movement for describing the size of the seed?
I was describing the size of the seed, and I think I was also tracing the shape of the seed. If you can picture a vanilla bean, that sort of pod-like shape, the mangrove seeds are like that and large, like you were saying.
Great. So you'll notice as Jamie gets a little bit more into the description that the movement might get a little bit more particular. I noticed, Jamie, when you did it the first time, it was just more straight up and down, but this time there was it kind of started slow and then it went into a little bit of just a curve there at the end. So let's just take that both to indicate the largeness of the seed, but also she wasn't talking about the shape, but the movement was indicating the shape of the seed. And there was a little curve there just at the end. Beautiful. Any other movements that you noticed? We'll gather one more.
There's a few coming up in the chat, Cassie.
Great. Fingers wiggling downward to describe the mangrove roots.
Yeah, like it was like this kind of,
Jen, what was the movement like? Do you remember?
I felt like she was making those roots when she was talking about the mangrove in the beginning. It's like her fingers were spread, like you know, and like going down into the mix of the salt water and the fresh water.
Yeah, and it's interesting, Elizabeth in the chat, she noticed kind of the wiggling motion of that. So not only the direction, but like there was a little bit of wiggle there. So let's put those 3 movements together. We have this sparked for Jamie and took her to the ocean, to mangrove seeds. So we had the wave moving our body. And then the next we had the shape of the seed, and also indicating that it's a rather large seed, and then those roots going down, and then we'll take the wiggle until our arms go all the way down and out of view. There. Beautiful. Those will be our three movements connected to spontaneous gesture. Jamie, you want to help us put these ideas together?
Yeah, so we're going to take it from the top. And our first movement, does anybody remember what that one was? So we're gonna do that 3 times. So we're gonna curve over once, twice, to the 3rd time. Great. And then we're going to trace the lines of the large seed and the small seed. And let's just do that once, right? So the large seed and the small seed. And then we're going to go into the ocean to our mangrove seed, and then to the roots. Fantastic. Okay. Do we feel like we got enough practice on that? All right, let's try it with some music. One, 2, we'll go on 3, go. Coming to stillness. Wonderful. Thank you all for dancing with me, noticing and sharing. We're going to say goodbye to our live studio audience for now.
Thank you all so much. It's great to see you. Some familiar faces, some new faces. Wonderful. And we'll just go back to the slides for a moment. The process that we've been using to create the dance, using tools like detail and spontaneous gesture, we call this build a phrase. And build a phrase can be used really to cultivate our observation skills. You know, as creating a dance can really shift the way, shift how we're noticing and what we might be noticing. Build a phrase can also be used to collect and document and remember our observations and what we're learning. This can increase learning retention, really expanding the potential for how what we're learning and discovering can be applied. It can help us to remember and deepen our understanding of a process or sequence through the creation of movement. So really simple example of a process in the Discover video that we used, if you remember, is the willow tree, the branch breaking, and then getting caught in the current, traveling down the stream, getting stuck in the mud, rerooting, and then beginning the cycle of growth again. So a simple sequence, but a way that movement can help us to remember that. And then build a phrase can also be used to help us synthesize our learning and discoveries through the making of a dance. And through this process of synthesizing, we're able to begin to notice and build relationships between our observations and the things that we're learning. If you want to learn more about build-a-phrase and detail and spontaneous gesture, you can visit the Dance Exchange website and the toolbox, where there's also other tools that can support you in kinesthetic approaches to environmental education. There's a lot to explore there, and all of this really grows on a long history and legacy of work within our organization, beginning with our founder, Liz Lerman. So you can find out more about the origins of these tools and how they've evolved and been shared over time.
Great. And with that, we would love to open this up to questions. So go ahead and we'll take some questions in the chat, and I believe Anne and Judy are going to help us moderate those.
Great job. It's amazing. So please add your questions. We have a few minutes right now, and I wonder if maybe we could do the ending part, and then for those who want to ask questions could stay after. How does that feel?
Yeah, that sounds,
because we
good.
have about 4 hours to the top of the 4
minutes
to the top of the hour.
We're happy to stay beyond with people that want to ask questions. There's some great ones coming into the chat.
Yep. Okay.
So before everyone who has to leave at 4 goes, we would love to hear from you. Please stay connected if you want to partner with the Dance Exchange on a moving field guide. Our information is here. Definitely stay tuned into what's coming next with Moving Field Guide Discover. And please, as you're mostly educators, you know how we all feel about getting some feedback. Tell us what you think. Please take a moment to take our brief survey, which is going to be shared in the chat. You'll see the link pop up there. And if you do get the PDF of this, the link, there will be a link so you could also take the survey then.
That is perfect. Thank you so much. And to all the guests on board today, that was fantastic. Really a wonderful webinar. And I'm going to turn it over to Anne to close us out here, but please stay on because we do have some really great questions in the chat. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Jamie and Cassie. Well, so wonderful to see your movement. You're both so graceful. It's great to see that. And I am just going to take the next few minutes to close us out like we do for all of our webinars. We end with some announcements and updates from NAAE, and want to remind everybody that you will be getting the recording, all of the slides and the chat notes sent to your emails by the end of the week. You can also find it on EE Pro on the same page you got to register for today's webinar. That will be online by the end of the week. And if you like today's webinar, I invite you to check out our entire webinar series. It's on EE Pro under Learning and Monthly Webinar Series. We've been doing these since 2016. So there's lots of webinars to peruse on our site. And Judy mentioned earlier that we are celebrating our 50th anniversary this year. Wanted to let you know that in the next several weeks, we're going to be rolling out a number of new updates and ways to give, ways to share, ways to get involved, and all the different highlights from the last 50 years of NAAE's 50th anniversary. So stay tuned for that. Part of that is rolling out so many new ways on how you can become a member, whether it's a professional, if you're a student, or if you're retired. And by becoming a member, you're joining this incredible, growing global network of environmental education professionals, just like everybody that's on the webinar today. And one other announcement is that the call for presentations is now open for our 50th annual conference. It's going to be virtual this year in October, and we're accepting proposals through May 7th. So you can check it out on our website now. And the last announcement I want to make is about a brand new fellowship that NAAE just launched. It's all for people who are working at the intersection of civics and environmental education. It's an 18-month-long fellowship with so many training, mentoring, and network opportunities. You can learn all about it on our website. We're going to be selecting 40 fellows from across North America, and applications are due May 17th. And that was the last announcement I had. Let's go back to the questions on our chat.
So go ahead, Ann.
Oh, I just want to start off with Morgan had a question about mobility, and if you have any specific recommendations for people that might have limited mobility in doing some of the movements that you suggested.
Do you want me to take this one, Jamie, and start? Do you want to start?
Sure. Go ahead. I think we were both looking for the unmute button at the same time.
We can both just stay unmuted now. So one of the places that this question takes me is that Dance Exchange truly works across generations and abilities, working with all different ages. And I've had the opportunity to do moving field guide, particularly in some settings with older adults where there is really varying mobility, and we may not take as long of a journey. The route might be smaller. It might be through a small garden, or it might be through the view of a window in a room, or through even using some of these process and tools, using images and books and maps. So there's a way that it can really be responsive and adapted to different bodies.
Yeah, I would add that in this setting, we didn't do the full workshop setup. And in that, we invite people to, go, hey, you are in charge of your body, right? And so we offer that if there's a movement that doesn't work for you for some reason, you can go ahead and change that and adapt it. So if we're asking you to do something really big, but for some reason, you have a shoulder injury, you can change it up. And so how it fits you is really dependent on the individual, and giving people that choice to make those modifications.
And, in the Moving Field Guide Discover video, you saw me creating many of the movements, but when we're gathered in a space together doing a moving field guide, the movements that are being created and collected are really coming from the group that is on the experience together. So, how I notice Mark's movement and translate that into my body might be different than how another person observes that movement and translates it into their own body. But it's really a process where the dance that is created grows from the group that is gathered. So it isn't just the movements of myself as like the choreographer leading the moving field guide or Mark.
So we have had a number of questions about how to get kids who are uncomfortable with this to participate. And I think Elizabeth had a question about how to introduce this type of learning to children. So thinking about how do you get started, and how do you help those kids that might be uncomfortable?
You want to kick this one off, Jamie, and then I'll jump in?
Sure. It's really interesting that I don't feel like I've ever ended up in a situation where the whole room is, like sitting like this and staring at you. It's one helpful to, if there's a teacher or something that is usually with that group, to have them be participatory and moving. We also, once again, a lot of it is in the setup, and starting small, with what does your body need, and just sort of stepping it up to and now we're going to create a dance. Like that's the end point, and usually children are very big on moving, and so I feel like there's that. And also offering that you don't have to do like I was saying before, the exact thing that someone else is doing. So if you're really shy and this is where your movement is, you're still participating and that energy is there. And hopefully as we continue along, you'll start to feel more comfortable in the movements. Cassie?
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking of a very specific example where we were actually in residency at a nature center for a week, and there was a young boy who, for the first couple days, wasn't as interested in joining in the movement parts of it. He would in small ways, but it was following and kind of bringing attention to where his interests were and what he was observing. He was like just fascinated with the bees there, and also really into these birds' nests that they had made. So beginning to create movement, not from what we had gone in necessarily planning to do, but to work from sort of where his interests were. And that is the starting point. And by the end of the week, he was sharing his his dance about the bees and the dance that he built from the detail of the bird's nest.
Anne, do you have another question?
Sure do. There's so many great ones.
I know.
There's one here from Brian Nichols, also in Florida. Brian is asking about research on using sensory contexts like music and smell to help students recall things. And he's asking if you, Cassie and Jamie, if your work includes any studies that show how dance movements can help participants recall information. So for example, you have a test tomorrow, so let's all go outside and dance the content again to remember. Have you seen anything like that?
I mean, we definitely experience it in the work, that it has that ability and power, like time and time again. We experience it. We'd love to do like a deeper, more formal sort of research around that if people have ideas or about partnerships that could support that. And just recently, we've started talking with someone about doing moving field guide around memory gardens and working with people that have dementia, and the ways that some of these moving field guide and sensory activities are helping to recall memory, sensation. So it's an area of interest, and I don't know if there's any. We have several people on the webinar today that are educators that we've worked with too, that also might be aware of more formal research around this. If you all want to jump into the chat with any.
I think you're going to have a lot of new followers.
Yeah.
I hope you've been able to see in the chat all the wonderful comments. It's just really been wonderful opportunity on a workday afternoon to hear the music and feel all of this. I think there was another question in here about some of the ways that you've used this for well-being, and I can't find it again and who suggested that, but the ideas of thinking about this in that context of helping to promote well-being, especially during this time.
I feel like most of where this lies for the work that I do is not necessarily with well-being, but it's with connecting people and place. So starting those, particularly for city folks, that, oh, I am part of the nature of the things that are around me. These are processes that are going on in my backyard. For example, with I did a community workshop on stormwater management, and you see the water move down the street and into the drain, but you're not necessarily viscerally connected to it. And then moving in that way connects you more with that process. And I like starting those conversations there and then going to okay, well, we've got all these we have stormwater treatment plants. Yes. And when people find out that's not really a thing, folks are horrified. And I start to use that more for like a civic engagement, and thinking about what we would like to see, more so than the well-being aspect of it. Cassie, have you done some moving field guides that are well-being focused?
I wouldn't say like we go in with that as the focus, but what I experience in doing so many of these moving field guides is that through the experience and at the end of the experience, you'll hear people say, well, my body feels so much more calm, or I feel like connected to this place in a different way, or to each other in a different way, or, oh, I have like so much more energy than I had before. You know, I was just sitting and not moving in this way. So I think that there are well-being outcomes to the moving field guide, even if that isn't the theme of the field guide always necessarily. And then I really think in this time where so much of our lives and learning and engagement is happening online, one of the goals that we really had in the work with Prince George's County this year in developing the online training was not about spending more time behind a computer, but how could the bit of time that we were spending behind the computer together turn us to a different kind of connection and relationship to our bodies, and to turn us outdoors into a different relationship to being outside and in our environment. And then I'd say the other thing connected to well-being that I hear a lot on these moving field guides is at the end of it, like a feeling of, oh, like what I noticed matters. what I specifically observed and noticed, and that matters, and what we noticed together because of the group that has come together, that we might not have noticed that matters. And I think that provides a sense of connection and well-being and health.
That's great, Cassie. I have one more question here related to what you're saying about virtual and learning all online. And so many questions came through at registration asking specifically about that. And you did this workshop online for us. Do you have any tips or tricks for folks that are trying to do this movement and learning in a virtual setting? Any advice you want to give to those still working in virtual environments?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we're experimenting with is like not all the time behind the screen. So how can there be like breaking it down into small experiences, exercises, commissions that, you know, we might do some of the learning behind the screen, but then go away and explore and then come back together and share. There's some resources that we've developed where you may be teaching some of the tools first in an online way, but like the Moving Field Guide Explorer map, supporting people to then go out and kind of create their own moving field guide in their neighborhood or at their school. Some of the educators we've been working with have used that. Encouraging people to get out of their chair, different ways of, you know, or different relationships to how you're behind the screen. Jamie, I'm curious what you've been finding too. I know we've been doing some of this work together, but also independently.
I think you have more range of motion than you originally think. So first it's, you know, going, okay, taking a moment to orient yourself as to what is around you, and then using the space, the depth and the levels. So, you know, you've got all of this space there. It's fun to work with the camera. So, you know, what are you noticing? How do things change? So using the camera and lens and the fun, you know, that you can have with it as part of your dance. So that activates the space, even if you're still sitting down.
Yeah. And whereas like on a moving field guide, if we were gathered outside, we'd be collecting most of the movement from what we're observing in the immediate environment and what we're learning from each other. With these moving field guides online, with educators. There's been ways that they're getting their students to go away and take video or images, photographs to bring those back, and then those become like a source for creating the movement. So it isn't like a single experience, but something that can be built more over time and have a relationship between what are we doing behind the screen together and what are we out and observing in the world that we bring back to share.
Well, Cassie and Jamie and Anne and Sam and Karina and Emily, thank you all so much. It's been really a wonderful webinar for all of us. Some of us haven't done this in any of our programs. So thank you all. And Karina and Emily, you really have kept up and answering all the questions in the chat. Sam is our newest employee at NAAE, so we're so happy to have him on. And all of you who are willing to be guinea pigs and be on screen, thank you. And we look forward to working with you in the future, and we'll keep this line of communication open, and really happy that you're working with the Forest Service. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And have a great afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.